Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 2nd April 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States is seeing Neil Young, fearing potential barring after his European tour due to his Trump criticism, citing deportations. Former Costa Rican President Oscar Arias had his visa revoked after criticizing Trump on social media. Senator Cory Booker gave a 25-hour Senate speech condemning Trump. House Democrat Jerry Nadler criticized Trump's anti-Semitism in attacking universities. Nina Yankovic of the American Sunlight Project called the Capitol Hill hearing on the censorship industrial complex under Biden fiction. Secretary of State Marco Rubio directed consular officers to scrutinize student visa applicants' social media, especially those supporting Palestinians. President Trump is showing signs of concern that his targets may team up against him. Donald Trump insisted he had decided on the reciprocal tariffs hitting countries that have targeted the United States, but the White House admitted he was still ironing out the details. Donald Trump has launched a volley of tariffs impacting allies and adversaries this year, promising Liberation Day on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. The State Department declined to confirm reports of visa revocations, citing privacy reasons. The ultra-Zionist group Betar is taking credit for identifying pro-Palestine students for deportation in the U.S. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says the decision is based on Trump's agenda to stop crime and make America safe again. U.S. officials downplay a journalist being included in Yemen attack chats, but it sheds light on workings of White House. Harvard President Garber said, life-saving. Research is at stake amid Trump's review of $9 billion federal funding. According to a PwC report, the evolving U.S. trade policies require Indian businesses to develop a long-term resilience strategy. President Trump plans to implement reciprocal tariffs on April 2 to combat high tariffs imposed by other countries. Donald Trump, in an interview, maintained an aggressive tone, saying, "I never take military force off the table in regards to acquiring Greenland." The University of Minnesota says one of its graduate students is being detained by U.S. immigration authorities. U.S. Senator Cory Booker is protesting on the Senate floor for as long as he is physically able, Donald Trump said in a telephone interview with NBC News from Mar-a-Lago, his private club, about his plans to serve a third term. World markets are on edge as Trump prepares for Liberation Day tariffs. Nearly 2,000 scientists, engineers, and researchers penned an open letter to the Trump administration calling for a stop to the assault on science. Layoffs have begun at the Department of Health and Human Services, including at the Food and Drug Administration and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Attorneys general and governors from 23 states and the District of Columbia filed a lawsuit arguing the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services lacks the authority to unilaterally claw back funding the states had already built health programs around. A U.S. court dismissed a claim that a complaint was served on an Indian official during a Washington visit, citing failed delivery attempts. Election results released in the Wisconsin judicial race reveal liberal judge Susan Crawford defeating Brad Schimmel. The contest was the most expensive judicial election in U.S. history, costing a combined $80, and it could change the ideological balance of the state's Supreme Court. Republicans won special elections for 2 key House seats in Florida, vacated by Donald Trump's cabinet nominees. Randy Fine won Mike Waltz's former district, and Jimmy Patronis won the seat vacated by Matt Gaetz. The win bolsters Republicans' margin of 200 and 213 in the House of Representatives. Harvard University has become the latest target in the Trump administration's approach to fight campus anti-Semitism. Princeton was among 60 universities that received a warning letter from the Education Department in March over accusations of anti-Semitism. A judge rejects the government's request to move Mahmoud Khalil's case to Louisiana. Shifting focus to El Salvador, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, a makeup artist, was deported to an El Salvador prison because US authorities interpreted his crown tattoos as gang affiliation. The Trump administration deported more alleged gang members to a prison in El Salvador from immigration detention at Guantanamo Bay. Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed the group included murderers and rapists from Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gangs. A Maryland man with protected legal status was sent to the notorious prison in El Salvador following an administrative error, according to an ICE declaration. Across the Pacific, in Taiwan, Pete Hegseth indicates us backing for Taiwan, but analysts warn Taipei to tread carefully, noting Trump has the final word. China launched joint military drills around Taiwan after Taiwan's president, Lai Ching-te, designated China a foreign hostile force. Across the Atlantic in the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer offered big-ass tech firms tax cuts in return for lower tariffs from Donald Trump's administration, as the UK braces itself for a global trade war. The UK government is willing to reduce the headline rate of its digital services tax, DST. Meanwhile, regarding Ukraine, Wang Yi is on a 3-day visit to Moscow for strategic cooperation talks, surrounded by uncertainty around the partial ceasefire in Ukraine and U.S. President Donald Trump striking a critical tone against the Russian and Ukrainian leaders. In Lithuania, the body of a fourth soldier was found after they went on a training mission in a 70-ton vehicle that sank in a bog near the border with Belarus. Turning to Greenland, Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen said President Trump will not get Greenland. In Somalia, the European-based command said the latest raid was conducted in coordination with the Somali government and hit multiple ISIS Somalia targets. Focusing on India, in Delhi for talks, Dutch FM says India and the EU should compare notes on U.S. tariff impact. The Dutch FM warns that tariffs will bring inflationary pressure on the U.S. economy and says he will sign a semiconductor MAL with India soon. The Indian entity has scrupulously followed all its international obligations on strategic trade controls and end-user commitments, says External Affairs Ministry. Moving to Yemen, strikes around Sana'a, Yemen's capital held by the Houthis since 2014, and Hajj Governorate also wounded 12 others, the rebels said. Regarding Gaza, Dr. Joanne Liu, former head of Doctors Without Borders, says NIU cancelled her talk on USAID cuts for being anti-governmental. She was planning to speak on Gaza and federal cuts to humanitarian aid. Finally, SpaceX launches its first polar astronaut mission. In Gaza, the Health Ministry reports that at least 50,399 Palestinians have been killed and 114,583 injured in Israeli attacks since October 7, 2023. The United Nations reported that Israeli forces killed 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers in Gaza as they were trying to aid injured civilians and then buried them in a mass grave. Evidence indicates at least one person was detained and killed with his hands tied. Some bodies of paramedics were found with tied hands or legs and gunshot wounds to the head and chest. Other reports indicate 16 Palestinian paramedics and first responders were executed in Rafah. Israel claims 9 of the 15 dead were Palestinian militants. A 17-year-old Palestinian boy, Walid Ahmad, died in Israeli prison after being held without charge for 6 months. His family reports his health deteriorated, and Palestinian officials claim he was denied medical care after being arrested for allegedly throwing stones at Israeli soldiers. Bakeries in Gaza may soon shut down due to Israel's blockade of food and supplies, the longest in the 17-month campaign against Hamas. Palestinians face hunger as the blockade forces Gaza bakery closures, with parents struggling to feed their children. Hamas issued a call to arms against displacement as Israel ordered new evacuations, with Sami Abu Zuhri stating that anyone who can bear arms must take action against what he described as a sinister plan. Turning to Israel, evacuation orders were issued for parts of northern Gaza, including Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, and neighborhoods in Gaza, as well as southern Gaza, including Rafah and parts of neighboring Khan Yunis, with people ordered to head to Mawasi. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dropped his nominee, Eli Shavit, for spy chief after backlash, possibly due to a column he wrote criticizing President Trump. Despite the initial conflict, Netanyahu named a new spy chief, reflecting an internal battle between Netanyahu and other parts of the state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says military pressure on Hamas is working and that cracks are emerging in negotiations. In Lebanon, an Israeli military strike near Beirut killed at least 4 people after the Israeli military bombed a residential building in Beirut. The attack on the outskirts of the capital was the second in less than a week, raising fears that a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah could unravel. An Israeli strike killed a Hezbollah official in Beirut, sparking condemnation and fears of escalating conflict despite a ceasefire. China's People's Liberation Army, PLA, conducted extensive military exercises dubbed Strait Thunder 25A near Taiwan, involving approximately 20 Chinese vessels and the aircraft carrier Shandong. These drills, which took place in the middle and southern parts of the Taiwan Strait, were framed as a stern warning against separatism aimed at Taiwan's government and a message to Washington. The timing coincided with Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's announcement of measures to counter Chinese influence and espionage. China is also reportedly developing new barge technology to potentially facilitate troop and vehicle landings on Taiwan. Further afield, China has expressed support for ongoing talks related to the Russia-Ukraine war, while Germany views these truce efforts as deadlocked. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang in Moscow to discuss the situation in Ukraine and bilateral relations. Aiming to mend relations after a border clash, China has signaled its intention to import more products from India, emphasizing the importance of both nations as ancient civilizations, major developing countries, and members of the Global South. Amid concerns about potential new tariffs, China, Japan, and South Korea convened to bolster regional trade. Confirming the safety of 3 Chinese crew members, the Chinese Foreign Ministry reported they were suspected of being kidnapped from a boat off the coast of Ghana. China's economic influence continues to grow, with BYD surpassing Tesla as the largest manufacturer of electric vehicles, AVs globally, generating over $100 billion in revenue in 2024. BYD is expanding into emerging markets, including a nearly $1 billion investment in a new factory in Brazil to maintain growth and offset potential U.S. tariffs. In other news, China has discovered a significant new oil field off Shenzhen, with test drilling yielding a daily production of 413 barrels of crude oil and 68,000 cubic meters of natural gas. Turning to Bangladesh, Chief Advisor Mohammed Yunus asserted that Bangladesh is the guardian of the Bay of Bengal. Separately, Congress leader Pawan Khera shared a video clip suggesting that Bangladesh's invitation to China poses a threat to the northeast region of India. Meanwhile, Taiwan reported detecting almost 20 Chinese vessels operating off its coast during China's recent military exercises. The Taiwan Defense Ministry also released a photograph of the Chinese aircraft carrier Shandong as it participated in the drills. Russia has stated it cannot accept the U.S. peace plan for Ukraine in its current form, as key Russian demands were not being addressed, according to Sergei Ryabkov, a foreign policy advisor to Vladimir Putin. Russia views Trump's deal-making as a can't-lose proposition, anticipating benefits regardless of the outcome. Despite President Trump's belief that Putin will fulfill his part in a potential Ukraine deal and the Kremlin's openness to talks, Trump has threatened secondary tariffs on Russian oil if a deal isn't reached and has criticized Ukrainian President Zelensky's leadership. Russia continues to bombard Ukrainian cities, while Putin's negotiating tactics are testing the patience of the White House, with the Kremlin describing the war in Ukraine as a drawn-out process. Ukraine accuses Russia of committing a war crime after an attack on a military hospital wounded personnel and killed at least 2 people in a residential building. Russia continues to pound Kharkiv for the second night in a row. A prison death underscores Russia's crackdown on LGBTQ people, marked by police raids on gay nightclubs and investigations targeting suspected gay individuals. In the Baltic Sea, a NATO plane tracks and dodges Russia as part of a new program aimed at preventing suspected Russian sabotage, though no such events have occurred since the patrols began. Russia's economy is showing resilience due to government spending supporting the invasion of Ukraine, though this has a serious impact on Russian society. The Russian Supreme Court has received a petition from the Prosecutor General's office to lift the terrorist designation for the Taliban, who were outlawed 2 decades ago. Turning to Brazil, President Lula is scheduled to meet with Putin and Xi amid fears of a global trade war, and is expected to attend Russia's Victory Day celebrations on May 9, marking the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. Japan is grappling with a national security concern stemming from depopulation, which has led to declining military enlistment rates. The Financial Services Agency intends to amend the Financial Instruments and Exchange Act, legally recognizing crypto assets as financial products. To counter Chinese assertiveness, the U.S. military command in Japan is being upgraded to a new warfighting headquarters, underscoring Japan's pivotal role. Preserving the intricate beauty of Edo Kiriko glassware, artisans in Japan are meticulously repairing damaged stained glass, employing gold and silver leaf fused with glass to create scenes from classical Japanese literature. The unique green glass of Nijima is crafted from molten lava rocks. With cherry blossom season underway in Tokyo and other areas, parks and rivers are now filled with people celebrating, and the blossoms are predicted to reach Hokkaido in May. A government panel has cautioned that a mega earthquake in the Nankai Trough could result in nearly 300,000 deaths, spurring authorities to prepare for the catastrophic event. Fuji Television Network has come under scrutiny after an investigation revealed the organization failed to support a female employee who was sexually assaulted in a case linked to a top celebrity, which indicated a lack of human rights awareness among the management. Looking ahead to Expo 2025, Osaka Kansai, an Osaka University student group, is organizing a global online jam session aiming to involve performers from approximately 50 countries and regions. Turning to Myanmar, rescue workers in the nation's second-largest city are facing challenges due to soaring temperatures and a shortage of manpower as they search for survivors of the recent earthquake. In South Korea, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Bong Joon-ho is preparing for the release of his new movie, Mickey 17, and has emphasized the significance of depicting the stories of marginalized communities within society. Finally, countries party to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons met in New York to reaffirm their commitment to a world without nuclear weapons. This was preceded by a special training program organized by the United Nations in Hiroshima. France finds itself in political turmoil as Marine Le Pen was convicted of embezzlement, resulting in a 5-year ban from holding public office, potentially sidelining her from the 2027 presidential race. Le Pen denounced the verdict as politically motivated, marking yet another setback after her 3 previous presidential defeats. The ruling has ignited controversy, prompting Jordan Bardella, leader of Le Pen's party, to call for protests. Government officials, including Prime Minister François Bayrou and Justice Minister Gérald Darmanin, have weighed in, with Bayrou expressing support for the judges and Darmanin urging a swift appeal, while admitting the court's timeline is outside government control. Furthermore, the French Parliament is poised to debate changes to rape laws, potentially mandating explicit consent for sexual acts. Meanwhile, Jordan Bardella, with a strong presence on TikTok, steps into the far-right spotlight. The Eiffel Tower, a timeless symbol of France, continues to attract visitors. Moving across the border, Switzerland is set to host a groundbreaking scientific project, with scientists unveiling plans for a significantly larger atom smasher, poised to unlock physics enigmas beginning in the mid-2040s, located along the French-Swiss border. Finally, in Finland, the world is taking notes, learning valuable lessons on happiness from the Nordic nation. Australia, shadow treasurer Angus Taylor lauded Elon Musk's Starlink, assuring that the coalition will release costings on its proposed public service cuts. Opposition leader Peter Dutton hasn't ruled out potential cuts to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, and is declining to specify which public servant positions would be eliminated, despite expressing concerns about Australians' financial difficulties. Dutton pledged to release costings related to public service cuts before the election on May 3rd. The coalition intends to grant gas producers access to a $4 billion net zero fund initially designated for critical minerals. Senator Susan MacDonald stated that gas would be classified as a critical mineral to enhance industry funding, ensuring its sustained importance to the Australian economy for years to come. Foreign Minister Penny Wong stated that Labor is realistic about potential tariff outcomes with a future Trump administration and is unwilling to compromise Australia's healthcare system or biosecurity laws. The Greens have committed to advocating for the allocation of 1% of the federal budget, equivalent to a $7.80 billion, to environmental initiatives if they secure the balance of power following the election, as Labor faces increasing pressure to clarify its nature policy and plans for establishing a Federal Environment Protection Agency, EPA. Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen denied that the state's police force is in disarray after Acting Chief Commissioner Rick Nugent's decision not to pursue the permanent position after serving only 41 days, citing the demanding around-the-clock responsibilities of the role as his reason for stepping down. Sydney's Royal Prince Alfred, RPA, hospital closed its HIV psychiatry clinic due to psychiatrist resignations, which has affected 200 patients and resulted in the loss of specialist psychiatrist services for patients in the pain clinic and eating disorder units. Former staff members indicated that some HIV patients now require acute mental health care. In Japan, an Australian man is retracing the steps of his grandfather, who died there as a prisoner of war during World War II. Myanmar is grappling with the aftermath of a catastrophic 7.7 magnitude earthquake, the most severe in a century, that has ravaged central regions, including Mandalay. Ancient sites have been toppled, homes and hospitals have collapsed, and critical infrastructure like airports, highways, and bridges has sustained significant damage. The earthquake triggered aftershocks along the Sagaing Fault. Rescue operations are underway, hampered by damaged roads and communication disruption. The official death toll has surpassed 2,700 and is expected to exceed 3,000, overwhelming the healthcare system. Humanitarian agencies are appealing for increased aid before the monsoon season. Aid is arriving from China, Russia, India, and the UK. However, the US response has been criticized as slow, attributed to previous funding cuts. Myanmar's military faces accusations of airstrikes and obstructing aid, particularly in a rebel stronghold. Volunteers have reported being blocked from reaching specific areas. New video footage reveals survivors trapped under rubble. Some view the earthquake as a sign of the military regimes, led by Min Aung Hlaing, impending downfall. Thailand felt the effects of the earthquake in Myanmar, prompting an investigation into building collapses. The investigation aims to determine if construction standards were adequate to withstand seismic activity. Pakistan is under increased observation due to plans to deport 3 million Afghan nationals and accusations of aiding terrorism. The Pakistan government cites strained relations and escalating militant attacks as reasons for the deportations, alleging that the Taliban in Afghanistan is harboring Pakistani militants. Around 845,000 Afghans have departed in the last year and a half, with nearly 1 million of the remaining 3 million considered undocumented. Over 50 prominent female Afghan women's rights activists seeking refuge in Pakistan are among those facing deportation, fearing potential imprisonment or death under Taliban rule. Former Pakistani PM Imran Khan, founder of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf (PTI) party, has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize while remaining incarcerated since August 23. Meanwhile, Mohammad Javaid Aziz, a Pakistani Canadian, was arrested for smuggling U.S. technology to organizations connected to Pakistan's military and weapons programs. He allegedly ran an illegal procurement network through his company in Canada to acquire U.S.-made goods for prohibited entities in Pakistan involved in its nuclear missile and UAV programs. In a separate counter-terrorism operation, Pakistani forces killed 12 terrorists in drone strikes. But the operation also resulted in the deaths of 9 civilians in the remote Katlang area of the Marden district, according to a provincial government statement. In the United Kingdom, donations to Prince Harry's charity, Centrebale, have declined since his relocation to the US, according to Chair Sophie Chandauka. UK regulators have levied fines exceeding £77 million against 10 car manufacturers and 2 automotive trade bodies for colluding on green advertising. An investigation prompted by a tip from Mercedes-Benz. Tony Blair's think tank is urging the UK to ease copyright laws to aid AI firms in product development, cautioning that stringent measures could strain transatlantic relations with the US. England will introduce new financial literacy lessons for pupils aged 5 to 16, covering online spending, in-game purchases, influencer marketing, and scam avoidance. Wildlife groups are worried about the UK government's plan to streamline environmental rules to boost economic growth and house building, emphasizing the importance of nature conservation. A smartphone-free childhood campaign, led by Daisy Greenwell and Joe Rye, is gaining momentum in Britain due to concerns about harmful online content affecting young people. The morning after pill will be available for free in pharmacies in England later this year to reduce inequalities. Iran is facing heightened tensions as Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei rebuffed President Trump's threat of bombing if it does not agree to a peace deal and constrain its nuclear program. Iran's UN Ambassador Amir Said Iravani warned of a swift and decisive response to any aggression by the United States or Israel against its sovereignty. Iranian officials have accused the U.S. president of violating the UN Charter. Tehran has rejected direct negotiations with the United States in response to a letter from President Trump concerning its rapidly advancing nuclear program. India is launching a major initiative to eradicate cervical cancer. Tens of thousands of doctors will be trained to promote the HPV vaccine. These doctors will educate mothers about vaccinating their daughters. They will also visit schools and community centers to combat misinformation about the vaccine. In related news, India and Chile will soon begin negotiations for a comprehensive trade agreement. The two nations have also agreed to strengthen their collaboration in Antarctic exploration. Indian Prime Minister announced an agreement between Codelco, the world's largest copper producer, and Hindustan Copper Limited. This deal could reduce Chile's dependence on the Chinese market. Astronaut Sunita Williams, currently in space, has expressed her admiration for India. She intends to visit the country, her father's homeland, Williams is also excited about the possibility of the first Indian national participating in the Axiom mission. X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, suffered a global outage that lasted several hours. This outage also affected users in India. Grok, X's AI, identified the problem as a massive outage impacting users worldwide. Some speculated that the outage was caused by a DDoS attack. Turkey is seeing President Erdogan's push for a new constitution that could allow him to run in the 2028 election. Securing Kurdish support is vital for Erdogan, yet distrust is rising in Kurdish regions. Crackdowns on rivals and unfulfilled promises since the PKK disbandment are fueling this distrust. The Turkish government is using facial recognition and other technologies to suppress dissent. This has resulted in approximately 2,000 arrests and protests, prompting demonstrators to mask themselves. The opposition is calling for early elections, a demand strengthened by the imprisonment of a Swedish reporter. As Turkey enters a public holiday, the opposition plans to sustain the protest movement, shifting tactics to more targeted events. Italy is grappling with a significant increase in citizenship requests from individuals with Italian heritage, prompting the introduction of more stringent rules. Authorities believe many are mainly interested in acquiring an Italian passport. In a collaborative effort, Italian and German police conducted raids, apprehending over 30 people, including a German police official linked to a mafia-related food fraud scheme. The 'Ndrangheta mafia group is the focus of the investigation, which centers around the fraudulent sale of upscale food and equipment. Further, Italian law enforcement is investigating a suspected arson incident after a fire ravaged 16 Tesla electric cars at a dealership near Rome. Meanwhile, in Pompeii, archaeological excavations at the Porta Sana necropolis have yielded 2 nearly life-size sculptures of a man and a woman, possibly a priestess, buried within a tomb. Venezuela is at the center of a migrant controversy, with President Nicolás Maduro seeking the return of Venezuelan migrants sent by the U.S. to El Salvador and then moved to a mega prison by President Nayib Bukele. Separately, lawyers are fighting to block a deportation plan from the Trump era, arguing it oversteps congressional authority. Shifting to economic matters, Venezuela has reported that the U.S. has rescinded licenses for transnational oil and gas firms, a move that French oil firm Morel and Prom M&P confirmed affects their special license granted in May of the previous year. On a different note, Maria Carmen Rendiles is set to become Venezuela's first female saint after receiving approval from Pope Francis. Iceland is again facing volcanic disruption as the Reykjanes Peninsula, southwest of Reykjavik, saw another eruption near Grindavik. This marks the 11th eruption since 2021. The town of Grindavik, already evacuated last year, was emptied again. The Blue Lagoon Spa also closed. Authorities believe this eruption could surpass the previous 10 inside. Lava has already breached protective barriers built around Grindavik. Those who remained in the town were told to evacuate at once. Europe is currently contemplating how to manage a military alliance traditionally led by the U.S. The focus is on aiding Kyiv in its conflict with Russia. Simultaneously, Europe is working to guarantee its own security. Ukraine continues to navigate complex diplomatic and historical challenges. The nation is working to secure ongoing U.S. backing amid reports that former President Trump cautioned Russia against delaying ceasefire negotiations. Simultaneously, Ukraine is pursuing a minerals agreement. Further, the country is advancing its decolonization initiatives. This includes relocating its battlefield museum. These efforts to remove Soviet-era symbols started in 2014, coinciding with Russia's annexation of Crimea. A comprehensive record of important events in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war is being actively maintained. Greece is grappling with severe weather as Crete endures storms and flooding. The Cyclades Islands, including Paros and Mykonos, are also facing widespread flooding, prompting school closures and traffic bans. Amidst these environmental challenges, Greece is preparing to ban single men and male same-sex couples from pursuing surrogacy to have children. Brazil is preparing for the trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who stands accused of attempting to subvert the results of the 2022 election and instigate a coup. The government formally apologized to families of victims of the military dictatorship, admitting that remains found in a clandestine mass grave after 35 years may belong to their relatives. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is scheduled to visit Moscow and Beijing in May to meet with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, respectively. The United Kingdom is on the cusp of relinquishing sovereignty over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, a move greenlit by the United States. The UK will cede control of the archipelago, its last African colony, while retaining control of the joint US-UK military base on Diego Garcia under a 99-year lease. Mauritius is poised to regain sovereignty over the Chagos Islands after extensive negotiations. The agreement with the United Kingdom includes provisions for the continued operation of the US-UK military base on Diego Garcia. The United States detained Mohammed Rahim Wahidi, a former Taliban ambassador to Spain and a lawful permanent resident, at Washington Dulles International Airport in Virginia. Wahidi's detention lasted over 30 hours upon his return to the country over the weekend. Authorities have not yet released the specific reason for his detention. Meanwhile, in Spain, a tragic mine accident occurred in the northern Asturias region. At least 5 people died in the accident. 4 others sustained injuries requiring medical attention. Investigations are underway to determine the cause of the mining accident. Sudan's National Museum is now missing thousands of artifacts. This follows its recapture by the Sudanese army from the Rapid Support Forces, RSF. Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, chief of Sudan's paramilitary RSF, has commented on the situation. He stated that the war with the army is not yet over. Italy is at the center of escalating tensions between Donald Trump and Europe, a situation Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni finds increasingly difficult to navigate. Each new crisis, whether over Ukraine or tariffs, intensifies the challenge of her balancing act. This is especially true concerning the false promise of moderation often associated with Europe's far-right political movements. The Prime Minister's position is further complicated by Europe's complex challenges regarding post-American nuclear deterrence options. These challenges are intertwined with the intractability of its far-right political movements. Mexico City recently witnessed Shakira's immense popularity as she delivered 7 sold-out concerts, captivating audiences with her empowering performances. A separate investigation in Mexico has focused on a ranch in the western region, uncovering its alleged use as a training facility by the Jalisco New Generation cartel, a dominant force in the drug trade. Zimbabwe is currently gripped by political tension, with President Emerson Mnangagwa facing internal calls for his removal from the ZANU-PF party, nearly 8 years after he took office after a coup. Mnangagwa has strongly condemned these calls, labeling them as treasonous. Separately, in Harare, at least 95 people were arrested after anti-government protests at Freedom Square. Authorities stated the detainees were part of a group of around 200 who allegedly threw stones at police. Canada is grappling with severe weather. An ice storm left over 300,000 Ontario residents without power. Winter storm warnings are in effect. Freezing rain is the main threat. Some areas may see snow turning to ice pellets through Monday morning. Moving eastward to New Brunswick, the city of St. John sees the Irving family businesses wielding substantial economic power. The Irving companies are a major employer. Some locals worry about the possible negative effects of such concentrated economic influence. El Salvador's prison system, known for its severe conditions under President Nayib Bukele, has garnered mixed reactions. For 3 years, President Bukele has publicized the harsh realities of the prisons. He defends this approach as vital to tackling the nation's gang issues. The United States is now sending individuals removed from the U.S. to these El Salvadorian prisons, signaling a degree of support for Bukele's methods. Malaysia was the site of a major gas pipeline explosion near Kuala Lumpur, leaving 145 people injured. The resulting fire soared to the height of a 20-story building. The blaze inflicted significant damage, impacting 190 homes and 148 vehicles. Petronas has identified one of its gas pipelines as the source of the explosion. As a safety measure, authorities have restricted access to homes within a 290-meter radius of the explosion site. Thailand continues to grapple with the aftermath of last week's earthquake, as rescue operations persist at the collapsed building site in Bangkok. The crucial 72-hour golden window for potential survivors has now elapsed. Still, teams meticulously search through the debris, and the public is increasingly vocal in demanding explanations for the building's failure. Syria is tightening its borders to combat the trafficking of weapons, narcotics, and fuel. These illicit activities flourished during the Assad regime. This increased border security has led to clashes with Lebanese smugglers in the Bekaa Valley. The village of Qasar, near the border, demonstrates the difficulty of this effort. It suffers from weak law enforcement and minimal Lebanese state presence. Bangladesh, grappling with a population of 175 million, is witnessing a rise in religious conservatism fueled by a political vacuum. The removal of the country's authoritarian leader has created an opening. Political parties are using iftar events to signal potential alliances. This situation allows Islamist hardliners to gain influence. Bangladesh is potentially reinventing itself. Chestatsu unveiled its expansive £28 million Africa exhibit, spanning 9 hectares. This new space will house 57 distinct species, featuring rhinos, zebras, and ostriches. Zoo director Jamie Christen acknowledged the climatic challenges of replicating Ugandan and Kenyan environments in Cheshire. Saudi Arabia has declared the end of Ramadan, with the Eid al-Fitr holiday commencing on March 30 following the sighting of the Shawwal crescent. Niger's ruling junta has withdrawn from the Multinational Joint Task Force, NJTF, citing a need to focus on domestic security, particularly around oil sites. Uganda is facing criticism as individuals displaced by the East African crude oil pipeline ECOP project claim they received inadequate compensation and rehousing. Turning to Lithuania, 3 U.S. soldiers were found dead after their vehicle became trapped in a swamp during a training mission, while a 4th remains missing. In Afghanistan, Taliban leader Hibatullah Akhundzada stated during an Eid al-Fitr sermon in Kandahar that the country does not require Western laws. Yemen is at the center of a controversy as leaked chats concerning attacks have exposed details about the Trump administration, though U.S. officials are downplaying the involvement of a journalist in these communications. The United States will see former President Trump implement reciprocal tariffs starting April 2nd, a response to tariffs imposed by other nations. Jordan is facing an existential threat stemming from the ongoing war in Gaza. Finally, China and India, both ancient civilizations and major developing countries, are at a critical stage of modernization, a sentiment emphasized by Xi Jinping on the 75th anniversary of bilateral ties. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.